I'm really grateful that you're willing to do this with me. And I like to, like you mentioned, I really want to get people's stories and behind them. There's a lot of really big firms that do what we do, but then we also have individuals, independent folks, and we all do a really good job and try our best. So I want to get some of that story out there too. So we'll get into some of these questions I had sent to you, and I'd love to hear from you. So starting off, to you, in being a financial planner, what's the hardest part of being a financial planner to you?
Well, first, I'm excited to talk, about these questions and help further the dialogue on being a financial advisor in today's world. So appreciate the opportunity. So for me, the hardest part has always been the marketing and getting that next new prospect / client. And I've mentioned, I believe in, some of our group meetings that I've been in the industry long enough where I can remember being able to pick up the white pages and, dial that way and do a lot of that old school cold calling. And now as I'm getting back into giving advice, certainly that has changed. And I mean, it was never fun, but I knew that if you put in the effort, you would get results. So in today's world, the marketing is online and the primary marketing is online. There's still ability to get on and call corporations and so forth. But the ability to cold call individuals has changed. And so to reach individuals seems a lot more, to me, daunting in many ways, because while I'm doing social media posts and videos and trying to share my story and all of that, in many ways, to me, it just seems like it's going into a black hole and that I can't control the results. Whereas in the old world, I knew it was a numbers game. Now, this is still a numbers game. If I guess enough people see it and enough people, like and share, then numbers come into play. But there's no control. I'm struggling to find the control over to get X number of people to see the posts and all of that.
Yeah,
so
it's not a 1-to-1 ratio type of thing.
Yeah, and so I'm struggling with that.
With how it was when you first started out, was it that simple? Was that the prescribed method? Was just you pick up the white pages, you start calling and hope that somebody answers the phone, gives you the time of day, and you get a client that way?
Oh, absolutely. The primary way, I mean, you still networked and hope to meet people through referrals, and so that's always been a part of business, certainly. Starting out, though, I was in my mid-20s, and the whole quote credibility, fake it till you make it was a big phrase at the time. And I'm dating myself here, but that probably gives it away as well. But so yeah, to answer your question, it was a big part of the day. We had specific hours set aside that we cold called, and it was hard because not everyone picked up. You're calling at dinner time, all these crazy things that you have to kind of mentally work through, like, oh, I don't want to bother people, those types of emotions. As you work through that and got more used to it, then the challenge became, and this was a positive of that whole experience, the challenge became, okay, I'm going to have like 10, 15 seconds to connect with this person. So, you really learn how to hone in on listening skills. All of your communication skills had to come to bear in that initial, 15 seconds, if even that long, to try and make that connection that they didn't hang up on you. And I still remember one of the pieces of advice I got from my initial training manager was, when you're making these calls, and even today, when you're speaking with clients on the phone, it still holds true. It's just not for cold calls, but you listen behind the call, if that makes sense. So, I mean, you're listening to what the client is saying, of course, but you're also trying to get that additional awareness of what's going on in that client's environment at that time. So, if you're speaking to someone and you hear dishes being cleaned in the kitchen sink, so they're focused on that, or just, you try and just kind of get a sense of what their environment is, to help with that more efficient communication, whether it's urgency, meeting them where they are, all of those factors of communication,
Yeah.
were learned for me initially through those types of calls. So it was hard, but it was a great experience. And again, I know, proven, yeah, the numbers played out. If you made 10 calls, you're going to talk to, I forget what the actual numbers are. You talk to maybe 3 people, schedule 1 or 2 appointments, 1 holds, whatever the numbers are. But yeah, if you put in the calls, the numbers played out. Yeah.
Right. Well, one thing that I agree with you, because even in my career, it wasn't, where I started out, it wasn't so much as like a pick up the white pages scenario, but it
Mhm.
was, here's this list of people to call that you don't know, go ahead and reach out to them. And moving into kind of this new era where we've got social media, and like you said, it does feel
Right.
like you might be sending something into the ether. One thing that I thought about that was kind of positive about this difference is everybody that's on social media or on the internet or scrolling a page or something where you're trying to connect with them is willingly there, right? Versus
That's true.
the old school method, which might involve calling somebody out of the blue, knocking on their door, talking to them in a restaurant, or talking to them, it's basically where you have to cause an interruption.
Right.
Where
That's true.
where in these terms in social media, they're willingly there. Now your post may not be exactly what they were looking for when they went there. Maybe it was for travel pages or lifestyle or comedy or
Right.
whatever it is. But that's one positive, because I'm trying to get over my fear of that, myself. I like to see the direct results. So that's true.
Yeah, I was just going to say that those are all valid points in that people are on the internet searching things, because they want to be there. So connecting is still a little bit of a black hole in my mind. So,
Yeah. It's
but I
tricky.
will say, a few years ago, I created a Facebook business page, and not a group, but just a business page. And I was getting help through a marketing company, creating posts, and they would find some videos and so forth. And so my niche is I work with family caregivers and families in caregiving situations. I had about 100 and some followers, and this company found a video created by a daughter, an actual daughter caregiver of her father, for her father. And they were sitting side by side and they were just having a conversation. The father had dementia, and so he didn't recognize her as his daughter, but he was
Mm,
speaking about his daughters to her. It was just a really heartwarming conversation from the dad, how much he loved his daughters, how whenever he spoke with them, they filled his heart with love and joy and all these things. And again, one of his daughters was sitting next to him and he didn't recognize her as his daughter.
mm.
And she was doing her best to carry on in the conversation. And as he got more heartfelt, she eventually let her emotions show a little bit. But this allowed me to see how quickly the internet can, and so folks on social media can react. That one video took me from like 100 and some followers to over like 30,000 in maybe a month.
Wow.
And I absolutely see the opportunity in it. And I wish, since then I could have found or created posts that emotionally and reach people in that way.
I love that. Yeah. I think it's important too that we use it as a good method to gauge what type of content our followers are actually interested in.
Right.
I think that the dark side of that is that some people will do anything to try and make, some type of viral hit.
Sure.
But the bright side of that is you do get a lot of pretty quick feedback of what is working, and what is not. Yeah. Let's switch over. I want to ask about,
Yeah.
you described that video, and that's really powerful in working with people. Tell me about your own biggest payoffs. What is a big payoff or a satisfaction point in what you do that really hits for you?
Great question. And it might seem odd, but I've never been highly money motivated. Certainly, I'm in an industry where professionally, based on skill, drive, things coming together, luck, all of that mixed together, you can make a boatload of money. I have valued my time a lot over the years. And so, I've made choices that have benefit in other ways. But while certainly I appreciate a good income, I think the biggest benefit or payoff for me being in this industry is when I know that a client has absorbed what I've been educating them about over time. Probably the most common example of that is if you work with a client over a year or two or however long, and then the next market correction comes along, and you're getting on the phone, reaching out to your clients, and you're asking them how they're feeling about things, and just trying to gauge their temperature and so forth. And then in the first 30 seconds, they're like, we're not worried. You told us this was going to happen. We've had a couple of good years, blah, blah, blah. We know now is a buying opportunity. Whatever you've taught them over the years, in those moments of stress or crisis or whatever the situation might be, when they can regurgitate to you what you've shared over the years, that still allows them to make good decisions. To me, that's the payoff.
It's really cool. What I'm hearing you say is that it's not so much that when they were scared, they called you. It's that when you were proactive, your lessons, your messages, your work that you had already done, the education you'd given them had sunk in. And there's a big difference between that, that it wasn't that you created a sense of complete dependence on you as their advisor or as their planner, but the payoff for you was you did such good work that the lessons stuck, that they were no longer afraid, given the, big media's best efforts to panic them or terrify them.
Exactly. To add maybe more to that, I've never wanted my clients to rely on me, if that makes sense. And I don't ever want to be a crutch for a client. I'm there always if they need me. Absolutely. Every client's different, and some just can't get to that place of standing on their own 2 feet 100%. So I'm not saying I'm not there for clients. I'm always there for clients. If I do my job really well and I can help them gain education, gain the confidence in themselves that they know they can make a lot of decisions on their own now, that maybe they didn't have enough knowledge in the past or maybe enough confidence to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you guide them to that point, you help them go as far as they want to go on that journey. Some clients go farther than others. I don't ever want to teach people that I'm their crutch. If I can help always support them and they appreciate that, and they're still in a place that that's supporting them, absolutely. But if I can get them as well as to a point where they don't need me, that's okay too. Because I look at my own values, and maybe that's what this is for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a value, internal value, where right or wrong, I've got a really strong sense of independence, and I like to do as much as I can on my own and learn along the way. Don't get me wrong, I know my limitations, and I'm I've got a boatload of them for sure. And when I get to those places, I'm reaching out for help. No questions asked. I know I've gone as far as I can. I'm not looking to make my life harder or worse, or maybe make a huge mistake along the
Mhm.
way. Part of my internal value is, okay, do as much as I can on my own, be independent, learn, grow, those things. And so I don't know, right or wrong, I just always kind of approach my clients with that same value of, okay, you haven't necessarily asked for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to
Mhm.
educate you. I'm going to help you make decisions maybe that you weren't comfortable in the past, help build your confidence, get you maybe, to stand up more, if you will, in those previously uncertain situations where you have to make choices. Go as far as you can, which is going to be farther than it was in the past on your own. And I'm always here for you when you get to that point of, hey, I want to run this by you.
Which could be really important, given that you're working with a lot of caregivers who are often in that situation, right? Where they're taking care of family members that are so dependent upon them, that
Yeah,
don't have the ability to be independent. And your goal is, yes, to be a support for them, but also to give them a bit more sense of autonomy of, I can do this, I can manage this, because it's critical, and it's really, really difficult being in those situations, I know. Uh, so that brings me to the next good point, which is in your practice, in this focus of working with caregivers, care providers, and others, what is it that you feel that you really do better than anybody else?
oh, great question. And this is always kind of hard.
There's some hubris baked into that question, I know.
Yeah, and I've always struggled with that part of it too, the self-promotion side of things.
Sure. Sure.
But I would say, working with families and caregiving situations, it's highly stressful, depending on where I meet them in their journey of being a family in that situation. But all caregivers need to find that place of control of their situation. Look, everybody's life is crazy nowadays, but if you can envision the average family caregiver is a female, mid 40s, kids of their own, families of their own, full-time jobs, and now suddenly they're putting in an additional 20 hours of work being a caregiver on
Mhm.
top of everything else. Caregivers need to know that they need to do all they can to maintain a sense of control because they have so much going on. As I help them, now it's different in many situations because they often call me with specific crunch time scenarios because that's what they're dealing with now. And that's oftentimes their focus, and they just
Mhm.
need to get through that. If I can teach them, you know, take a breath, all of that a little bit, and then educate them and kind of teach them how to look at certain financial decisions, things to think through a little bit, um, initial steps that they can take to start regaining that sense of control. So those are certain skill sets or certain bits of knowledge that I do my best to impart that. So in that next crunch time, maybe they go a little further on their own quickly and efficiently. Again, it's still stressful, but maybe not as stressful because they know, oh, okay, well, Scott told me, you know, first thing I should probably do is look at X, Y, and Z. And so I'm
Mm.
going to do that. It's not going to take me forever. I've done it before. I know how to do it. So I'm going to look at these couple of things. And then maybe that gives them their answer. It's doing my best to help support them in ways that they know that they can acquire more control. That, in my best hope, will help them alleviate some stress, get things done more efficiently, and get back to what their primary goal is to love and care for their dad, mom, whomever, as
Mhm.
opposed to spending 20 hours researching things.
Right. Right. That makes
So
sense. And what I'm hearing you say is it's your goal here is to be able to give them a sense of control, of structure, of routine of
processes. Yeah.
process of a procedure to go through, because as I've worked with some of these types of clients too, it can be very uncertain day to day, and that's really the name of the game, is uncertainty. If I'm caring for
Yeah.
mom, mom had a really tough day today, and so it required a lot of extra help from me. Or
Yeah.
dad has been struggling this past week with this, and I've got this deadline coming up, and I'm not exactly sure of how to cope with it, to deal with it. And you being there, it sounds like you're mastering the fine tuning of, I got to give you the answer that you need, while also encouraging you to, as a caregiver, slow down, assess your situation. Here's the options we have. Here's how we can go about this in a procedural way to get you the best help that you need.
A big part of that sometimes is just helping someone get organized um, in a caregiving situation, because while we all try to get ahead of things, life is what it is. Family dynamics are what they are, and so oftentimes families don't communicate enough before things happen, and so maybe you're thrust into the situation of being a caregiver. You went to bed, life was as you were used to it. 3 o'clock in the morning, you get a phone call, and life suddenly changes.
Mm.
You're driving to the hospital, and you're like, "Oh, I hope my grandfather's okay." He had me listed as primary contact in his phone. Wow, we never talked about this. I don't know what he has, where stuff is, what he wants. And so, right there, you've jumped off a cliff, or perhaps feel like you were pushed off a
Shoved
cliff.
off, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And there might be a certain reasonable level of free falling. Doing everything I can to help caregivers build some structure, efficiency, and help get to the bottom line of how to make decisions as quickly and efficiently as possible, so that they can continue to move on again with what's important to them.
Awesome. Well, I love it. I think it's a really important need. And I think there is something to be said for having that level of expertise and knowing that that is your primary goal. That's your primary center of clients and focus. Because when you do get shoved off that cliff, you need help. You need help from somebody who's dealt with it. And in your experience, dealt with it in 100 different scenarios and had
Right.
to help real people with it. I really love that. Well, let's
Yeah.
wrap up with this. What do you think will be different for a new generation of financial planners?
My head spins like 20 times a day about everything, tech wise and all of it. So I think the easy answer is everything is going to change. AI, are we in a career that will be replaced by AI? I don't know. I read an article the other day that doctors might become obsolete because of AI. And that made me, uh, turn my head a little bit, because then I thought, well, if AI can replace many in the medical field, yeah, we could be replaced. A doctor versus financial advisors, I would think it would be a lot harder for AI to replace, folks in the medical field.
Mhm.
Um, but on the other hand, history always shows that technology creates opportunity and has not, it's replaced people's jobs, but it's created other opportunities. So I'm looking at it in that fashion. I think when it comes to people's personal finances and making decisions and so forth, I believe that there's always going to be a space to help a vast number of people on the personal side of it, just
Mhm.
the human aspect of it. I think will always provide a space for, a knowledgeable person to be there for another person. Now, AI might crunch all the numbers more quickly for us. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that I oppose playing around with numbers, but I much prefer the personal side of this business. So, if I could input numbers into a financial planning software and AI takes over and I answer some basic questions about the client situation and, give some feelings and emotions and the story behind the client. And then AI has all the factual data and it spits out, things in a matter of minutes, and I review it and make adjustments, all that I'm okay with that. And then that still allows me space to get on the phone with you and talk things through, answer questions, and keep the personal aspect of it in play. That's why I hope it plays out, because I don't ever want to live in a world where we get rid of the human side of living and just get
Right.
so robotic and so AI focused and everything that, the personal side of having conversations and explaining things, and listening to someone's concerns and just sometimes listening is all that it takes. So all of that aspect of it, I hope never goes away, even though technology and everything is certainly coming fast and furious, and
Hmm.
um, we'll see how all that plays out. But
Sure. Well,
yeah,
I
I just
agree. I'm with you. I think as we're looking into the future, I think we're going to see a lot of new tools, and getting new tools, new advancements. That's not new. That's
yeah,
happened at every stage of the game, from mutual funds to active versus passive to all these different
yeah,
types of tools that are in the toolbox for people. And yet, I think what it really comes back to is still going to be, where is my trust as a client?
yeah.
Right? Where is the help, and where is the value actually coming from? And yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's always going to be a place, even though it'll evolve and shift.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to date myself again. So, there was no cards and everything. Talk to a client, right, on a note card or whatever, and you got the
Mhm.
stack. And so I remember when the first CRM came out that I used, and I was like, sweet, it's technology. And so, I mean, um, that was maybe a bigger deal at the time because it
Mhm.
did, you know, it allows you to get it more systematic and all that and reminders and everything, which is great. But it was a simple example of, technology and how things benefit you from a time saving perspective, freeing you up again to uh, reach more people, have those additional conversations, again, which I think is what this business is truly about. And um, can I opine a little more
Of
about?
course. Yeah,
Okay,
please do.
I appreciate it. So um, the last bunch of years, I was not in an advising role. I was working with clients in different capacities for some larger corporations, organizations in the financial industry. Um, but I decided to get back into the advice side for all the reasons we were talking about. And before I made the jump, I was spending time, online, joined different Facebook groups, XYPN Facebook community, and um, just listening to you folks, the next generation of advisors coming in, and um, hearing your perspective on things. And again, the rules had changed a little bit, which created more opportunity of how you could run a business, and again, all positive things for sure, which gave me the confidence to kind of get back into this scenario. But I truly, in my heart, believe that you folks are coming at this industry in a um, collectively as an industry. I feel in a um, how can I say it, in a way that is it's not that old school advisors didn't care about people, but it was more motivated from a sales perspective
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons. Um, but your opportunities and your conversations and how the next generation of planners approaches this is about people being the focus. That's the sense I get very, very strongly, and that um, it's about helping people. And the idea of a niche, um, that was a little bit of a head scratcher, because I was like, wow, you mean you could really hone in on who you really enjoy working with? That's a
Mhm.
little different.
Mhm.
Um, but those are just other examples of me trying to support what I was saying about this is a people focused industry. And even with all the technology changes that have occurred up until this point, you guys are coming in, obviously embracing the technology, but it's about supporting the niche that you want to support because you like those people, or you are one of those people, or whatever the reason is you jumped into that niche. But it's about the people that you're working for and looking to help. So
I love that. I love that you're
yeah,
focusing on that, and I think that's high praise for folks that are younger in the industry, like myself, and ones that are just getting started. I think what is really cool about this movement towards greater independence for a lot of different planners, and how easy it is to see what we're all doing, is we've
yeah,
realized that it is possible to have both. It's not necessary to completely discard the human element of this
right,
business in order to make a good living, to raise your
yeah,
kids or raise your family or whatever your goal is, that both are possible. And if both are possible, then we're not willing to settle for less. Yes, I'm gonna make this my livelihood, but more than that, I I have to be able to feel like I'm providing a real value for people, that when I'm
yeah,
looking back at the end of a career, that I'm going to be happy with all the memories and the people that I worked with, and that I
right.
left a really positive mark. And I think that's what you're doing here now, Scott. I really appreciate it. Uh,
I
yeah,
appreciate the chance to talk.
yeah. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, for sharing some of this, and I'm really excited to see how the business is going to expand. Okay,
Yeah, back at you, Mike. Thanks.
thanks so much.